This is the Happy Rant Sports podcast, in which Ted Cluck and Barnabas Piper rant about old sports, new sports, sports books, sports movies, and anything else related to sports that they feel like. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Rant Sports podcast. I am Ted Cluck, joined as always back in studio by my good friends and partner in sports radio, Barnabas Piper. And Pipe, we have got a long mega ep teed up here. We've got a bonanza of sports talk. Many things have happened since we last talked.
Yeah, we owe our listeners. We've been a little bit delinquent just due to life circumstances and delivering sports episodes. So we're gonna try to make up for some lost time and earn some affection back.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a good one here. We're gonna give you a good long sports ep. So a couple of commutes worth, couple of showers worth. What's the weirdest thing you do while listening to a podcast, Piper?
Ignore my children.
There you go.
I tell them to be quiet and leave the room because I'm trying to listen to something.
That's a good safe answer. My ignoring my children one is like I mow the lawn while I'm listening to podcasts, and it's it's actually the most relaxing thing I do. Because while you're on like a lawn tractor, no one can bother you because they might get like their foot cut off or whatever. So they literally can't get close to you.
That's true. The best they can do is try to get in peripheral vision and wave, and you just pretend you don't see them. And
exactly.
It's delightful.
Yeah. You act really focused. Like, hey, I'm mowing the lawn here. I can't be disturbed. But yeah, thankful for podcasts. Thankful for this podcast, Pipe, because there was a big Manziel minute that happened last night. And the Manziel Minute involved me and my sons. So one, Jonathan Manziel, big fan, friend of the podcast. He made his AAF, Alliance of American Football, debut last night for the Memphis Express. And my sons and I got tickets. We ended up sitting on the front row because there were only about 5,000 people in a 50,000-seat stadium. And as I mentioned to you via text, the ushers were none too interested in actually checking tickets. So we bought a cheap ticket, ended up on the first row, saw all kinds of cool stuff, had an amazing stadium experience. So I want to talk about like great stadium experiences that you've had. But what do you want to know about the Manziel Minute, man? What do you want to know about that?
I want to start big and work our way down to Manziel himself. So,
yep.
Since we've been delinquent, we haven't talked about the AAFL at all.
Yeah.
We have had multiple listeners. Clamoring might be a little strong, but I would say persistently reminding us that this thing exists, which we're both well aware of. But we have just not talked about it at all. So I mainly want to know, like, what is the game like? What's the quality of football? How does it compare to, say, like high-level college football? We know it's not the NFL, but it's a lot of former NFL guys. Kind of, what's the game like? What's the feel of it? Does it feel semi-pro? Does it feel professional? All of that.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the AAF. And I should say, and I think I've said this on the program before, I'm a huge fan of any like cut rate spring football league. Like I ride with all these projects. I get super excited about all of them. Dating all the way back to like my early childhood in the USFL. So I was super pumped about the AAF. It's been interesting for me in that I haven't watched it as devotedly as I maybe thought I would. And maybe that's a function of busyness. Maybe it's a function of, I'm ghostwriting a book for an NFL guy right now. So I'm kind of still deep diving into NFL stuff. But I like this stuff, man. And so here's the thing. We went to the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, which if you haven't been to the Liberty Bowl, great vintage stadium, man. Great old big concrete bowl. Normal sort of high-end NFL stadium experiences now. It's like being at the Mall of America in Minneapolis, which I know you're well acquainted with. I mean,
it's just deeply in love with. I love big malls.
I'm sure,
they're my favorite.
Big malls, general public. No, I've done one afternoon at the Mall of America, and that was one too many, believe me. But yeah, this stadium, man, it's old school. It was like going to a game in the 80s. You know what I mean? I felt like I was
going to RFK or something like that.
Dude, yeah, it's like going to RFK or the old Hoosier Dome, which is where I grew up going to games with my pops, or the Silver Dome, which is where we made the movie. Just real stripped down, bare bones, lots of concessions that aren't super expensive. And, lots of just great walking around because, as I said before, it wasn't super slammed with people. So as is our wont, we got there super early. Yeah, I'm kind of a freak about how I do football games. So like I have to see every second of warm-ups. So we got there a good almost 90 minutes before kickoff, and we walked right down, sat in the first row, stayed there the whole night. I don't think anybody checked our tickets, and we had an amazing time. So to your question, Pipe, I think this league will survive provided they really lean into like actual developmental guys. And I think the problem right now is there's just a lot of guys who were camp cuts like 4 or 5 years ago. So the football is good. I mean, the football is actually really good. The fan base in Memphis was really passionate. It was fun. I mean, people were getting into it. There were a lot of jerseys. There was a big, like, obnoxious but fun group of like college kids from Alabama who had road tripped up to like cheer for Trent Richardson from Birmingham.
I can't decide if that's like heartwarming or just depressing. Dude, I don't know which it is.
Yeah, I mean it's several layers of like interesting from a sports fan standpoint, because I think what the AAF delivers is that it really allows you to get a lot closer to the game than anything you'll experience in the NFL. I mean, if you go to an NFL game and you have a cheap ticket, like you're not getting anywhere close to the field, even for warm-ups. You know, all the sort of ticket Nazis are swarming around, and like you're not getting close. But like these college guys, they were wearing their T-Rich jerseys, and you know there were like 4 or 5 rows off the field, and they were just having a blast. And I think that's what a league like this offers, provided they have enough interesting players to kind of keep the fan base stoked. And
do you think anybody's going to get a legitimate NFL shot out of this league? Because, you know, you talk about having sort of like these recuperation players, the guys, but that requires the NFL paying attention. And on the one hand, the NFL will sign guys from, you know, Germany or Division III, or you hear about the guys who were, you know, kind of off the street walk-on types. But the NFL also is happy to just flush guys down the toilet and never think of them again, like Trent Richardson, for example.
That's absolutely right. And I would say that there are probably a good 60 to 70% of these rosters, guys fall into that category that you just described. Like guys that the NFL has basically given up on, they're not looking at anymore. So that's a chunk. Another chunk, like your Trent Richardsons, your Johnny Manziels, these are sort of, you know, name guys with a little bit of curb appeal who probably aren't getting back to the league. I mean, barring some kind of Manziel miracle, he's probably not getting back to the league. And Trent Richardson definitely isn't, although he played well last night. But those guys provide a little bit of like sizzle for the casual fan. But the category that I'm most interested in, and this comprises like 10 to 15% of the guys on the roster, are guys who I was watching last night and I was like, this kid could really play at the next level. And if the league is committed, kind of like the G League, I mean, if they're committed to developing these guys, and I think the NFL will have to get involved and subsidize this at some level, because I don't think pulling, you know, 5,000 to 8,000 people on a Sunday night in a huge stadium is going to pay the bills long term for this league. But if the NFL gets involved and does some subsidies for it, I think it's really got a shot. Like there were a few guys, you know, just watching last night, a few that I was aware of, a few that I wasn't aware of, who really played well and who I could really see in NFL camps. One guy, Memphis has a wide receiver, kid out of the University of Indianapolis. He was like a D2 All-American there. His name is Reese Horn, and he's like Adam Thielen light. In fact, physically, he's exactly like Thielen, caught a ton of balls, was super involved in the offense, looked really explosive. Like he's a guy that I could see getting a call from the Pats or some team like that.
Yeah, my suspicion is that 3 positions will get a lot of tryouts in the NFL from this league. And I have not watched any of it because, like you said, it's the wrong season for football for me. Like I don't have it in my mind that I watch football this time of year. When the Super Bowl is over, I just sort of go into low-grade depression until, you know, September. Wide receivers will get a shot because the NFL is always looking for playmakers, and especially as it goes more towards a passing league, every team wants to carry, you know, 7 or 8 different receivers. Offensive linemen, because there's never enough halfway decent offensive linemen. You know, as a Vikings fan, we've churned through like 30 in the last 2 years, and one of them is halfway decent. You know, they're just it's a position that doesn't keep up with the need.
And it's a little more mysterious from a scouting standpoint. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do more work on linemen. It's not just kind of an easy slam dunk scouting.
I don't know that this is true. Like, I don't have any statistics, but my impression is that there are more successful linemen in the NFL who are either undrafted or late round draft picks who have turned themselves into 8 or 12-year starters than just about any other position.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
And then anybody who can rush the passer gets a chance in the NFL. Like, guys get signed out of the CFL every year. Later we're going to talk about what the Titans did. They signed Cam Wake, who was on the Dolphins and previously was a CFL star.
Yeah.
So if you're a pass rusher, you'll get a shot too. So I think those 3 positions, you'll see some guys on NFL training camp rosters this fall. I feel like every other position, running back, quarterback, linebacker, defensive back, it seems unlikely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would say, Pipe, to your first question, pass rusher wise, the CFL is way more talented. Like, I've watched a number of these AAF games now, and like, nobody's jumped off the screen to me pass rusher wise. But every time I watch a CFL game, almost every CFL team has an elite pass rusher, like a guy who's either really long and freaky or really fast and explosive. And I haven't seen much of that in the AAF. And like, honestly, Memphis doesn't have an offensive lineman that'll get signed. They really struggled. Manziel was running for his life, much like he was in Montreal. So the line play has been spotty at best. But the 2 guys that really jumped off to me last night were receivers. So Reese Horn is one. And then for Birmingham, they had a guy out of Syracuse named Amba Edetawo, who was really, really effective in college. Was Birmingham's best receiver last night. Really did a nice job getting open and catching the ball. So
what kind of receiver is he? Is he more possession guy, downfield threat? What's he? How does he play?
He's a downfield guy. He plays on the outside. So Reese Horn plays on the inside some and the outside, but Amba was almost exclusively on the outside. And he did a nice job down the field. So he's got some speed to separate. He did work he caught a couple of fades. He caught a couple of corners. So he's a guy that I could see getting signed. But I think in order to really be interesting, the league needs more guys like that.
Yeah.
More guys who you remember from college, who sort of haven't had their moment of being in camps and getting cut, but who you could really see like matriculating up to the next level. And I think if they can bump that number to like even 20 or 30%, they'll have something. Because, I mean, look at minor league baseball. The whole minor league developmental system exists for a handful of guys in every organization, and everybody else is just filler. So that model can work. But it just, they need to tweak that a little bit. The other thing that was interesting about last night, I didn't see any NFL scouts walking around. Like, normally before a college game, and I've covered some major college games and been down on the field and stuff, like, you see all kinds of NFL windbreakers down on the field if there are prospects playing in the game. But I didn't see that tonight. And so I don't know how closely, I'm sure NFL teams are watching these games and evaluating accordingly, but I didn't see a lot of that kind of traction. So,
well, I have to imagine that some of that is also just, you think about, they broke the calendar. NFL scouts, I mean, it's a month before the draft. Which means NFL scouts are holed up in rooms. They're putting together big boards. They're arguing over which, whether the Pac-12 defensive linemen are better than the Big Ten, and kind of their area scouts and all that stuff. So I feel like they're probably in a place where they're like, we don't really know what to do with this spring ball thing, and we don't have a lot of confidence right now that it's going to produce any players. So I'm sure some guys will get signed, but I bet it'll take a little while for the NFL to figure out how to scout this. Or maybe they'll just use tape. Maybe it's something that post-draft they'll go, okay, well, now we can look at it.
Well, these are all guys that the NFL already has files on. I mean, all these guys have been evaluated coming out of college already. So a lot of that legwork has been done. Here's what I think the league needs, Pipe. I think they need a cheaper ticket price. So like sticker price, the cheapest ticket to get in the building for one of these AAF games in Memphis, at least, is $22. And to me, like that's too much for this, especially when you walk in the building.
For the cheapest ticket, especially like that should be tickets should be like $10 to $30.
Dude, I totally agree. They should have a $10 ticket, especially when you walk into the building and you realize 80% of it is empty. They could have sold tickets for $5. Yeah. I mean, kind of paper the house, build the fan base, build some excitement. I mean, even our little foray into trying to get them to sponsor our podcast in exchange for some seats. Like, they should have done that. They should say yes to all those things. If there's anybody with an audience who's willing to talk about your product, you should let them into the building and like allow them to do that. And it surprises me when that doesn't happen more. You know, like, why would they say no to that? There was no downside to it because
it's got to be ego. Like, because the NFL, if we reached out to an NFL team and asked to do that same thing, I would expect no response whatsoever because they don't need us. They sell out all the games unless they're the Chargers, and and they have billions of dollars in television money. They do not need us.
Yeah,
a league that can't draw fans, that has a fledgling audience, that nobody. I mean, nerdy football fans don't even pay attention to this. We're aware that it exists.
Sure.
Yeah, it's ego, I think, that stops them from saying, absolutely, come all media presence. Just whatever shtick you want to do from our sideline, from our, we have entire booths set up. Like, all of these, all of the suites are set up as recording studios. Have go to town. That kind of thing would be genius.
It shocks me that they're not getting more creative marketing-wise like that. Like, it seems like all these spring leagues, Pipe, they all pop up. They all try to market it like it's NFL football, and they all fail. I mean, they're like super stingy with press credentials, and they're not opening the doors to alternative media. And dude, every guy with a football blog and a podcast should be in there for free.
Honestly, they should be promoting that. Hey, do you have a website where you have written about football in the last 3 years? Here's a free ticket. We've got it waiting for you at will call. Just show up and show us your URL and you can have a ticket.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's strange, man. It's really, really strange. And I think, if I had to wager a bet right now, I think it's probably going to fail. I just don't know. I don't know how it's making money given its current model, unless they really drop the ticket prices next year and get creative with marketing and stuff like we said. But
yeah, I mean, unless the television money they get is enough to float it, honestly, what happens is these leagues are started by billionaires. Billionaires don't know anything about grassroots marketing, or if they did at one point, it was long enough ago that they've since forgotten. So they don't think of anything they do as grassroots or kind of word of mouth or shticky, all of which this needs to be. This all needs to be gimmicky. It needs Bill Veeck to come in and do gimmicks. They need to do free beer nights and $1 hot dog nights and just all of the things that get people to come in, kind of not for the game but adjacent to the game.
Dude, they really do. They need to lean into that minor league baseball, independent St. Paul Saints kind of thing, big time. But they're not, man. And football is so medieval that way. Yes. And football takes itself so seriously. I think that's another part of the problem, which was what was so fun about the Manziel experience last night. So this was surreal, and I didn't know really how this was going to go. So in a cohesive, full circle sort of way, KK and I were actually at Ford Field the night that Manziel played his first NFL game. His first NFL preseason game, KK and I had tickets, and people in the stands at Ford Field were just going bananas about this kid. Like, they were fighting, they were screaming. Like, it was an insane sort of.
Keep it classy, Detroit.
Yeah, it was a celebrity experience that kind of transcended sports, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there are a handful of guys, even in the NBA right now, that can engender that kind of response. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are stars in the NBA. There are guys that you would definitely get off the couch to go see in person, like Giannis or James Harden or, maybe Russell Westbrook or Steph Curry or whatever. And guys that are polarizing or guys that are fun to watch, like Embiid. But as far as being able to sell a book. So you and I are in the book business, and we know how rare it is for any sort of celebrity to slap their name on a book and have it sell. And usually publishers are sorely disappointed by these jock biographies that they put out when they only do
just to be clear, it's super easy for a celebrity to slap their name on a book. It's super difficult for that book to be profitable for the publisher. So there's the success is what's difficult. Publishers try this crap all the time, both in Christian publishing and every other part of the world.
Dude, that's right. So really in our sports adulthoods, Piper, football-wise, there have only been a couple of guys that can really sell a book. Like Tebow could sell a book, obviously. I think Manziel could sell a book. And it's a weird sort of train wreck, rubbernecking curiosity that sort of surrounds the whole Manziel thing. Because for one reason or another, and I want to hear you speak to this, and then I'll say more about what we saw at the stadium last night. This guy is still a superstar, and people were going bananas for him. And I can't for the life of me understand why, but I was right there with him. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I mean, most players who don't succeed, so high ceiling guys who wash out, and there's a ton of them. Most high round quarterback picks are, not most. A lot of them don't do well, and I don't care. It means nothing to me. I still want to see Johnny Manziel succeed. There is something magnetic about him, and alternatively, and I know that there are listeners who are yelling at their earbuds right now. Mm-hmm. There are people who love the fact that he is failing. They just hate him. And
dude, so can you speak to why you want to see him succeed? Because I agree, and I want to know why that is for you, and then I'll say why it is for me.
I think the reason is because he's not like other players.
Yeah.
And he's fun. Watching him in college was way more magnetic than watching
Jake Locker.
Yeah, or even like really successful like Andrew Luck.
Sure.
Who's a really good college player and has been a really good pro. He's just like a generic really good pro. Whereas Johnny Manziel did stuff that doesn't make any sense and was kind of dumb. I remember watching Drew Brees in college, and I had a similar feeling about him. He just wasn't as sort of he didn't like walk the tightrope as much, but he was a 5'11" quarterback who was breaking every passing record in the Big Ten at a time when it was still 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Yeah. And I was like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
And so watching him be, again, one of the best quarterbacks in history for the last 20 years has been awesome. And so I think that's part of it. I think I love his attitude.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. I love that he has an attitude.
Yeah.
Because it's
I love
fun.
that he has a personality at all.
We talked one of our sports episodes we did how kind of all these guys are curated presences coming through these Elite 11 quarterback programs and all this, and they're boring. Does Jared Goff have a personality?
Right.
Right. Everybody's afraid of Josh Rosen because he has opinions, and Johnny Manziel has opinions plus attitude plus swag plus just about everything else. To a fault, clearly.
Yep.
And now he's at the place where I want to see him succeed because I want to see him overcome his demons. Just for his sake. I want to see him not fall prey to the same, whether it's addictions or whatever it is that's kind of eating him. I want to see him overcome that. So for football and for just him, all of that.
Dude, no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you 100%. And so as I'm driving home last night, by the way, like, there's a certain joyful thing that happens when your kids get old enough to be cool. And my guys are there, man. So like driving to the stadium last night, it was about an hour from where we live to the Liberty Bowl. We were listening to the Bill Simmons podcast the whole way and they were enjoying it. And like Tristan asked for it. He's like, Dad, can we listen to Simmons? And I'm just like, man, this is too good. Because I remember so many long car rides that were just obnoxious.
Which Bill Simmons podcast? Because there are certain ones that he does that make me want to never hear his voice again. Like everything he does with Ryan Russillo, I hate.
Dude, right. But it wasn't Russillo. It was the one. So the inverse of that to me is everything that he does with Chuck Klosterman. I love.
Okay. Yeah. You are a big Klosterman fan. I don't love Klosterman. It's not a hate. It's just sort of I don't connect with this guy's vibe.
Yeah, so we listen to Simmons and Klosterman, and then we listen to Simmons and his dad. And like whenever he has his dad on there talking about the Celtics, I just love it.
His dad is great because he's just the perfect crusty old fan he loves his team so much.
Dude, he's a crank, and he doesn't change his persona for being on a podcast. You can tell he's not curated. He's not putting on. He's not like, I'm on a podcast. I better try and be clever. He's just like, it's like listening to a dad talk. And
it just as a dad, listening to the way he talks to his own son, he's not disparaging. You can tell that this is a shared thing, and it brings Bill down too because he's talking to his dad, so he doesn't have to be sort of the ego sort of goes away a little bit.
Yeah.
Those are super enjoyable, but it's always it's like low key heartwarming because you can tell that they just enjoy each other's company, and this is the thing they really dig doing together.
Oh, absolutely, man. No, it's so good for that reason. And yeah, so the other Bill Simmons dad thing I love is that he doesn't call it Kyrie Irving Kyrie. You know how everybody under the age of like 60 calls him Kyrie?
Mm-hmm.
He calls him Irving, and like I've got to mentally check for a minute to confirm that he is talking about Kyrie Irving when he talks about
what's happening here?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I'm driving home last night and I'm asking my boys, like, what was your favorite like Manziel moment? And they both said there was this moment, and this speaks to why I like him too. There was this great moment where he only got in for a couple series, and he played pretty well. He did some Manziel things. He ran around too much. He never throws on rhythm. I mean, he's got some stuff he needs to clean up about his game for sure. But there was a screen. He threw a screen to Zach Stacy. And so it got like 20 yards downfield. And then downfield, there was a little like scuffle between two linemen, one from the Express, one from Birmingham. Manziel like sprinted down the sidelines to get into this fight. Like, and to like have the back of his teammate that he's known for like 5 minutes. And everybody in the crowd just went bananas, including me and my kids. And we were all just like, I love that guy, man. That's the kind of guy, like, if you're playing against him, you probably hate him. But if he's on your team, I bet you love him. Like, Manziel was just having fun. He was jumping around in warm-ups and, like, slapping his teammates on the back. And he just brought a ton of energy to the whole thing, which, honestly, this team needed. Memphis was, like, 1-6. So they needed somebody to bring, something to the table to kind of energize the team and the fan base. And he was just fun to have in the building, just one of those guys. And a really cool moment happened right at the end of warm-up. So we were down kind of on the first row in a corner of an end zone, and we were in the end zone that Memphis was warming up in. So after warm-ups ended, kind of the whole team like streamed down the tunnel and back into the locker room. And Manziel stayed out for a minute, and he came like right into our corner of the end zone, and he knelt down and like ostensibly was praying or meditating. I don't know him to be a man of faith necessarily, but he was kneeling in the end zone, just kind of like having a moment, ostensibly being thankful for the opportunity to be back. And like everybody had their phones out, everybody was taking pictures of it, and as soon as he got up, everybody started screaming for him. It was a really neat moment. Just one of those fun like, sports.
That speaks to part of the reason I like Manziel more than say like Tebow. I've never liked Tim Tebow, and
me neither. Not for a second.
Yeah, and just he irritates the everything out of me. Whereas Manziel will play in any low level league.
Yeah,
because it's not good. I don't get the sense he's trying to make the NFL. I'm sure he has a dream of making it. I think he loves football, and you can see that by the way, if he's picking fights with a former D2 lineman who plays for the Birmingham whatever they are, he loves football and competing, which is magnetic.
Yeah,
it's not.
Dude, it totally is.
He's not there for the the paycheck or the fame because he's not getting any. So
yeah, that's it, man. That's it. And it was just surreal. It's surreal to see a huge star in that kind of a context. And I just wonder what that looks like, and I used to wonder it when I would live in these like kind of mid-grade, like Rust Belt cities, but some huge, musician would come through and play a show or whatever. I'm like, what does he do? Like, what does he do in Lansing, Michigan on a Saturday night after the show? And I have the same curiosities vis-a-vis Manziel, and I just find him fascinating. And honestly, like, if he wanted to do a book tomorrow, I would ghostwrite it. Like I would be all in on that.
You'd drop your current projects to do that.
Dude, I would. I would be all in on that kind of project. And I just think it would be a blast. I think it would be really interesting. There's a humility about him that I think you and I see it. And, not that we're these magnificent people or whatever, but I saw the same thing in Mike Tyson, which is why I wanted to do a book about Tyson all those years ago. There was just a humble sort of messed upness about this guy that a lot of Christian athletes lack. That's why I always found Tebow just manifestly boring.
So let me ask you about that, because that was a question that was when Tebow came up a minute ago. When people talk about Christian athletes, so Tim Tebow, your favorite Kirk Cousins, who is the quarterback for my favorite football team, unfortunately, people who like them are always like, oh, he's such a man of character. He's so humble. Like, what gives you the sense that man is humble? Because everything I see is curated image to make you think something about him. Not like, whereas when I see Manziel, he strikes me as the type who he's a complete screw up. But what makes him come off as humble is that he'll go, I have ruined everything, and I am a complete screw up. Not sort of this manicured, airbrushed image of humility.
Yeah, that's right, man. And I think it speaks to, okay, so as an audience, there are people who take what other people say at face value. And then there are people who, I don't know, I guess just look at the whole person. And so I think the vast majority of Christians, they really wanted to believe in the Tebow mythos, right? They wanted to believe, they wanted to ride with this guy. Like all in, we're riding with him. He's handsome, he's rich, he's incredibly successful. Like we want this thing to work out so bad that when Tim Tebow gets up on a podium and says, I'm humble, I'm humble, I'm humble, they believe it. You know what I mean? They believe it because they want to believe it. But I think, you and I tend to be a little more cynical by nature. So that's maybe
big shock to our listeners. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, guys. Hate to let you down.
And to be fair, like that's probably more bad than good in the grand scheme of things. Like I'm not super proud of that or excited that I'm that way. But in the case of, I think seeing through curated famous person BS, it probably is helpful because, nothing about the whole Tebow approach or the Cousins approach or any of these kind of super high-end approaches, like nothing about that says actual humility, even though they're saying humble, humble, humble. I just don't see it. And I guess
I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that you and I have both been in positions to be around people with large platforms, be they athletes or in ministry or in authors or whatever, who carry that same shtick. Yeah. And after a while you kind of see them and you're like, oh, that's a line of crap. Like you're just you're saying you're reading the script that the larger portion of evangelicalism will buy into. You're not that person though.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess seeing somebody do a humble thing, so like seeing Manziel play in these second-rate leagues because he likes playing or because he wants to get back or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Like to me, that carries a lot more weight than, somebody screaming about how humble they are. Now, I will say by way of a caveat and also by way of the fact that I really, really like the guy that I'm doing a book for right now. Like they do exist. And like the guy that I'm helping out right now, like he couldn't be more cool. That's just been a win all the way around.
Isn't the difference like how much you hear from these guys?
Yeah, I think so.
So when they're sort of a self-branded, I am a Christian athlete, I immediately just go, oh, no, not another one. Or I am a humble athlete.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from Manziel in forever. He keeps popping up, but it's other people telling stories about him, his play, his whatever. Yeah. The guy who you're writing a book with, and I'll follow your lead and not reveal anything because I'm sure it'll come out. Yeah, when the book comes out, he's not a vocal promoter of self. He's a football player who's seeking to be, seeking the best opportunities, seeking to win, seeking to be the best teammate, and people speak highly of him about that, but he doesn't speak highly of himself about that.
Yeah, that's right. And to me, that's the difference. Like, I really, really want to root for a guy like that. But I really, really don't want to root for a guy whose image is so curated, and dude, that even goes for like secular athletes. Like this isn't even a Christian athlete thing where we're like taking shots at these guys. Yeah,
because Manziel, as far as we know, I don't think he's a professing believer. So we're comparing somebody who we say we like, who is not a professing believer, to people who frustrate us who are professing believers. So it has more to do with handling the stage.
Right.
And your image than it does being a matter of faith when it comes to kind of the issue of humility, I think.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about some guys when we talk about the NFL trades and free agency who are every bit as aggravating, but they're not Christian athletes. But their personas are every bit as curated and it gets exhausting. Yeah. But you always have the choice to just not root for somebody or not follow somebody or not like really care about their career. And I think that's what's great about sports. But what was so fun about last night was seeing all these people kind of be excited about Manziel, even though there's nothing in his track record over the last like 5 or 6 years that would indicate that we would be excited about him. But yet there's still that hopefulness of this guy's a huge celebrity. He's probably the hugest celebrity that a lot of these people will see that up close. and they just wanted to see something magical. They wanted to have a memory. They wanted to have something to talk about with their kids in the car on the way home. And like for me, that's why you keep going back to sports. That's why it's so fun. And this league, this AAF, is going to need to deliver some of those moments in order to make it work. And I think that's something that the USFL way back in the 80s kind of had an intuitive understanding of. And so they went all in on some huge stars, some huge personalities. They kind of broke the bank for a few guys. And, if they hadn't tried to go to the fall, it would have worked out. It totally would have worked out. But they had some buzz and they had some excitement around their league. There were guys that you wanted to get off the couch to go and see. And I think that, to me is what was special about last night. Dude, yeah. So have we thoroughly discussed the Manziel minute?
I think so. That was a Manziel half an hour, and he deserved every second of it. Also got in some shots at Tebow, which makes me happy. And
dude, that's good. We covered all the bases.
I think we said a thoughtful thing or two as well, so good for us.
I think we did. Dude, just by way of closing the book on that conversation, I still think the CFL is better than the AF. I think the quality of the product on the field is better in the CFL. I think it's more fun to watch. Obviously, the fan bases up north in Canada are more established. And, I'm going to be way more excited to watch a whole bunch of CFL football in June than I've been to watch AAF football now. But I'll be a little bit more excited now that they have Johnny Football. So speaking of football, Piper, we got a lot of NFL trades and we got a lot of NFL free agency news to unpack.
as of yesterday when we're recording this, a significant retirement announcement.
Yeah. Dude, Tristan learned of that while we were at the stadium watching Manziel. He's a huge Gronkowski fan. So he was pretty crushed, man, that Gronk was hanging it up. But great career, fun guy.
We'll see if he actually hangs it up. I wonder if he's really done. I mean, he strikes me as the kind of guy who could happily walk away, had a great career, won a bunch of titles, broke a bunch of records, or, was on pace to set himself up there as elite. But also, he might come back in a year once his knees and ankles and back all feel a little bit better. I wouldn't be surprised.
Dude, I could totally see him coming back for the playoff run. Like if the Pats end up being decent this year and they're about to make a playoff run and they need him, I could totally see him coming back. So this could be a George Foreman retirement. It could be not a real one.
I think Brett Favre did that once or twice too.
He did it a few times. Yeah, he did it a few times, to be fair, with some teams that were, pretty closely involved with. Did you ever, I think I know the answer to this because I think we've talked about it, but you never got to a place where you could like Favre when he was on the Vikings, did you?
No, I hated him. Again, this is sports hate, not personal hate, not wishing ill on him, but I don't know how people root for a guy who you spend like 15 years rooting against a guy and watching him ruin your Sundays, and then he joins your team and you're immediately supposed to like him? I don't think so. Not to mention, it felt a lot like the Vikings signed a deal with the devil. And sure enough, he ruined that season for the Vikings as well. So, never made peace with that.
Dude, so I got some questions. I'm going to lob these at you. These are questions about the NFL free agency period, the trade, kind of the trade frenzy that we had a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to lob these at you. So number one, the Cleveland Browns famously acquired Odell Beckham Jr., so he's going to be reunited with his college teammate and friend Jarvis Juice Landry in Cleveland. Obviously, they'll be working with Baker Mayfield. Nick Chubb is there in the backfield. David Njoku at tight end. Is this team trustworthy? Like, can you feel good about fully getting excited about the Browns? Because I was excited about them last year when they were kind of a project, and Dorsey was doing some fun things in the offseason. But can we get fully excited about the Browns now? Do they have actual expectations?
Yeah, I think they do have actual expectations, which is why I feel less confident being excited about them now. Because, before if you got excited and and they fell off a cliff, it wasn't really a cliff, it was like a curb. Yeah. Whereas now, if they fall, people are talking about them as potential division winners.
Yeah.
Because of what has happened to the other teams in that division and the talent that has left and the aging of other teams, et cetera. I think you have to take them really seriously because the second half of last season, Baker showed he's a real NFL quarterback. And that was with pretty limited weapons. They were okay, but they weren't great. They've also added 2 or 3 pieces to their defense that'll make them better. Maybe not great, but it's more solid. And they've got they've got a couple draft picks they can add, although I think they traded their first round pick as part of the Beckham deal. But the thing that I love about it is that they did the collect assets thing for years.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Sixers did in basketball. And then they finally turned around and were like, okay, now's when we make the move to bring in an elite player. We have a quarterback who we pay next to nothing, so we can overpay other position, like Beckham, because he's overpaid. And we have supporting talent. We have a good inexpensive running game and a good, couple other receivers.
Yep.
Now's the time to go do it. And it seems like the right time for them to potentially take over that division too. So it feels really, really dangerous to say we should be excited about the Browns, because that's not a sentence I've ever said out loud. That sounds like saying we should be excited about, unicorns or something. But I think we should. I think Baker is going to have a monster year.
Yeah,
and
it's going to be fun, man.
I think he's the perfect quarterback for those two receivers as well, because both those guys are big personalities. They're very demanding. They are a pain in the what.
Yeah.
And he seems like he has the backbone to just well, first of all, he'll get them the ball. And so they're going to be mostly happy. And second of all, I think he can handle whatever garbage they throw at him. Whereas Eli would go pout in a corner, even though he's a 2-time Super Bowl winning 37-year-old veteran. It still seemed like Odell just freight trained him.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think they have the personalities to make it work. I also think that the upside for it being a huge disaster is there. It could really go south, and that makes it fun too. That makes it a really interesting team to look at, because Odell is one of these almost Manziel-sized superstars. He's.
But let's think about this from the football standpoint, though. What would make it be a disaster? Because the thing that I'm having a hard time picturing, unless Freddie Kitchens proves to be the worst coach, worse than Jeff Fisher, worse than, I don't know, Ben, what's his face, who was with the Giants a couple years ago, worse than any of those guys, which it's hard to imagine him being that bad.
Yeah.
What makes this a disaster? Because the quarterback's really good. The talent is good. Yes, it's volatile, but it's also productive.
The offensive line's actually low-key pretty good too. And I think there's almost nothing that can derail the offense besides maybe a Baker Mayfield injury. But I think the only thing that makes it a disaster is if a few things don't go right, if their defense can't stop people, and 3 weeks into the season they're 1-2, or they're 1-3 4 weeks in, and people start kind of eating each other, for lack of a better term. I mean, they start to eat their own, and those big personalities just become unwieldy. But yeah, I don't know. Even as I say that, I think the offense is going to be good enough to overcome deficiencies on the defensive side. But you look at all three levels of that defense, and they're pretty good. Denzel Ward was a great pick. Joe Schobert's played well at linebacker. They got talent there. Obviously, they got talent on the D-line. I think moving Peppers as a part of the package to bring in Beckham was really wise. I mean, that was a thing that GMs don't often do, which is to say, we were wrong on a guy, or at least we were wrong on him in our scheme, and we're gonna try to leverage him to get somebody who's going to be more right. And I actually think that was really wise, and you don't see it a lot.
It made it so that there was a salary component. Now he was on a rookie deal, so it was pretty cheap. But it made it so that they had to give up fewer picks. He was probably the equivalent to, say, maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick in that deal, and to them, a 3rd or 4th round pick is more valuable than he was. So it just sort of evened the deal and kind of cleared out a guy who they were like, this was the previous regime. We're not excited about him.
Exactly. Pipe, I got another question for you. Nick Foles. Does Nick Foles make the Jags better? Are we bullish on the Jags with the signing of Nick Foles? They paid him a lot of money. They paid him probably.
Those are two different questions. Does he make them better, and are we bullish on them? I think.
So address both.
I think he makes them better. Because having
any competent NFL quarterback
he's
playing in that offense would make them better.
We've seen him succeed. He is a a professional level quarterback who, in the right system, that's TBD. But at least their offensive coordinator is a guy he worked with in Philadelphia.
Sure.
Also the guy who got fired by the Vikings last year. But he's been good. He's way better than Blake Bortles. But that's kind of damning with faint praise too, because almost every other quarterback in the NFL is way better than Blake Bortles too.
Yeah.
I think trying to think of teams that Blake Bortles would make better right now.
Well, the Rams signed him to be their backup. So,
but I mean, if he was going to be there, if he was going to be somebody's starter, I think only maybe the Giants would he make better right now, because I think Eli is garbage.
That's really interesting. So let me bring this question a little bit closer to home, because we often use this next person that I'm about to mention as like the Mendoza line of NFL quarterbacks. Would you rather have Nick Foles or Kirk Cousins quarterbacking the Vikings? Who gives you a better chance to get where you want to be?
I think given what we've seen out of them the last few years, I think Cousins' ceiling is higher in terms of just statistical production, but I would rather have Foles because I get the sense that Foles knows what he can and cannot do. Yeah. And Cousins seems to have a real knack for disappearing when the team needs him.
I would rather have Foles in a game that matters at all.
And I mean, if it's a Week 9 game against the Lions, I'll take Cousins because he's more likely to put up 330 and 3 touchdowns.
Exactly.
But in a Week 16 game against the Packers with the division on the line, I'd rather have Foles. And Foles is an interesting one. I was listening to somebody else. I can't remember. It might have been the Ringer NFL podcast was talking about him and talking about how he is kind of alternated between the worst situations and the best situations team-wise. Because he was with the Rams, and then just these really miserable situations where he couldn't have succeeded. That kind of thing. The Jeff Fisher Rams. Yeah. But then he goes to the Eagles, and they have this great defense and a great system, and he's essentially handed the ability to play to his strengths. They worked around him, and I forgot about the Chip Kelly years. That was a great year for him, and
Absolutely.
He kind of alternated. Now he's in a situation that seems to kind of split the difference, because they have a great defense. They still have bad skill position players. Mm-hmm. They have an okay offensive line. And I don't think they're going to ask him to throw 40 times a game because they still want to be a running team for whatever that's worth. Although they hired the wrong offensive coordinator for that.
That's true.
So I don't know. He's had a really interesting when his highs are so high and his lows are so low, but how much of that is his fault? It's real hard to say.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I think this is a good move for Jacksonville. I think they get a really competent NFL quarterback with a high ceiling who's good in big games. I think it's a really interesting move for a team that needed to do something in the immediate term. And there was nobody in the draft that you look at and you go, if we drop them into the Jacksonville experience, they're really going to move the needle. And and all of their high priced players are within about a year to 3 years. It's like year or two of they're going to have to do major roster reconstruction because all those guys are getting too expensive. So they need somebody who can come in and take a competent roster to a competitive level immediately. And Foles has shown he can do that. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I like this for them. Pipe, let's talk about a couple of kind of legendary NFL idiots have changed uniforms this offseason. Antonio Brown leverages his way out of Pittsburgh, goes to Oakland to work with John Gruden, another big personality. Another legendary NFL idiot. Yeah, depending on who you ask. What do you think of this move? Just give me your analysis of it. Well, the winner is Antonio Brown. He got what he wanted. He got more money out of the deal. And he did not get traded to Buffalo, which was the rumor for about 12 hours. And I was so excited about it because the thought of him in Buffalo with Josh Allen throwing passes 11 rows over his head it just made me giddy. It would have been great. And instead he goes to Oakland where personality wise, I mean, they have been a big personality team historically, I think. Yeah. And Gruden has succeeded with guys who are kind of on the second half of their careers, formerly either really successful or big personalities or both. Yeah. It's his team. They don't have anybody else on that team who's sort of the
the lightning rod. Their quarterback is kind of a blasé non-entity. They don't have any other skill position players.
Yeah.
He wins, and he gets to wear a cool uniform, and then he gets to move to Las Vegas. So good for him.
AB in Las Vegas that's a match made in heaven. That's going to go really well. That's not going to create all kinds of problems.
No, that's I see no issues in his future at all.
No, that's a really good town for somebody who's has self-control issues. I think the Raiders are going to go 6-10 while having Antonio Brown. And I wonder how steep Piper the cliff is going to be for him. You know what I'm saying? I wonder how long it's going to be before he's a 45 catch guy. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. I think he has more left in the tank than that. I think he'll probably catch 94 balls and they'll go 6-10.
Yeah, I think that all really depends on how, again, going back to ego, because you think about guys like Jerry Rice or Tim Brown, two formerly successful, all-time greats, who turned themselves into different kind of receivers later in their career. Same with Chris Carter. These guys who went from, I'm going to catch, 8-9 passes a game pretty regularly to I'm going to be the slot receiver. I'm going to be the secondary option. Larry Fitzgerald's another guy who's done this.
Yeah.
Because Brown could easily last another 5 years catching a lot of passes if he's willing to be essentially the outlet guy, the slot receiver, the short routes guy, not the playmaker. The question is, can he see himself as anything but the playmaker?
Yeah, and I don't know if he has a body that can adapt to a different style. Like the great thing about Chris Carter, he was a big receiver, and he sort of, late career, he became kind of a sneaky route runner, a post-up guy.
And he was always slow, which means that he spent his whole career
he was always adapting.
Yeah, compensating for the fact that he wasn't going to outrun guys. He always had to out jump, out body, or out run really crisp routes. And
that's right.
Guys like Jerry Rice and Larry Fitzgerald were kind of different, where they were athletically dominant and highly skilled, and then just highly skilled.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That'll be interesting to keep an 'eye on for sure. Pipe, Le'Veon Bell, does he make the Jets better? Do the Jets have a plan? Let's talk about that. Do they have a plan, or did they just bring in a huge name because it's New York? Because they had to have some person in that offense besides Sam Darnold. I mean, name another New York Jets skill player.
Robbie Anderson, but that also sounds a lot like a kicker to me.
Exactly. When you're hitching your wagon to a guy named Robbie. It's not high school in the 80s, because I played with a great quarterback named Robbie Knox. So Robbie Knox, if you're listening, tip of the cap to you. But it's 2019 and it's the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think it's a different story.
Yeah, I think they failed at what the Browns, I think, succeeded at, which is reading the state of their roster and going all in on a talented player at the wrong time. I think they were 1 year away from 1 year of talent acquisition, restructuring that roster, from having the right team to bring in a volatile star player around Sam Darnold. So the Browns did it, and they already were pretty loaded in the trenches, decent skill position players, all the stuff we already talked about. So bringing in Beckham feels like this is the thing that pushes them into playoff contention or into a playoff spot.
Yeah.
With the Jets, it pushes them into what, 7 wins maybe?
Yeah.
Depending on how much the other teams fall off. They're in a bad division. It's the Patriots and garbage. So maybe that's it. Maybe they're pushing for the wild card because they're like, well, if we win, we can win 9 games because the Dolphins stink and the Bills stink, and so that's half our wins right there.
Also, I don't think Le'Veon Bell's play style ages well either.
Well, does it play well anywhere there's not a great offensive line? He was the beneficiary of one of the most consistent and strongest offensive lines for 4 years. Yeah,
his whole grab the handoff, wait for a beat, and then pick where the hole develops. I don't know that works in New York. I think that only works when you're running behind elite offensive linemen.
Right.
It'll remain to be seen. It's interesting how players age. I look at So I've been watching a lot of Eagles tape because of the project that I'm working on, and so I'm kind of bullish on Nick Foles. I think Nick Foles is he's going to be a nice pickup for Jacksonville. But to the whole issue of running backs aging well, like I look at a guy like LeGarrette Blount, and he may be the all-time example of like a style aging well. Like he's going to be good for another 2 or 3 years, doing a very specific thing in a very specific kind of niche offense and doing it very well. Whereas a guy like Le'Veon Bell, I think we're going to wake up one morning and realize he rushed for 600 yards in 16 games, and we're going to be like, oh, that I guess that's over, you know. And the Jets will have, you know, they won't be good yet when that happens. So yeah, I think this is a bad signing, and it's
the only way I see him being a significant contributor to them is if he becomes their leading receiver.
Yeah, that's true.
If he catches 80 to 90 passes, because he's a phenomenal route runner, and and not just out of the backfield, but you put him in the slot, you put him out wide, he can do those things. If the question is, can Adam Gase scheme that way? I have no idea. Adam Gase has long been thought of as an offensive mind, and he ran just a bad offense in Miami for several years. So who knows if he's actually good. And I think Bell can do that. So I mean, if he might be Larry Centers in 3 years, though, where he can't do anything but catch short passes.
What a classic name! I haven't thought about Larry Centers in a decade, but I'm so glad he got brought up today. I like that a lot.
I remember Larry Centers being a guy. He'd get like 6 carries a year
and catch 94 balls.
70, 80, 90 passes.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of them are for like 4 yards. It was essentially a handoff. But I mean, Le'Veon Bell could be that potentially.
Yeah. Good old number 37, Larry Centers. I love it. But Piper, speaking of bad offenses in Miami, the trigger man on those bad offenses, one Ryan Tannehill, is now a Nashville resident. He's now a Tennessee Titan. He was the product of it was a trade, right? Or did they just sign him?
I think they just signed him. I think he was cut loose.
Yeah, he was cut loose. They signed him. So Ryan Tannehill is now a Titan. I was texting with another Titans fan in the wake of this deal, and he was worried that it was going to lead to a quarterback controversy. And I wonder what you think of that. So if you take the 2019 Titans and you play all 16 games with Ryan Tannehill and you play all 16 games with Marcus Mariota, which team is better? Or are they appreciably different?
I think Mariota's better.
Okay.
The biggest issue with Mariota is the number 16. He just never does it. So there's never, in fact, when he's on a good roll, it's like, oh, he missed the second half with an elbow stinger or a hip impingement or just whatever.
Right.
And so there's never a consistency to his play, but his ceiling is way higher than Tannehill's. Tannehill's never been good. He's only ever been average to poor. Whereas Mariota has been horrendous to really pretty good. So I think they'd be better with Mariota. I think Tannehill's a way better backup than what they had last year, which was, what's his face? Gabbert.
Blaine Gabbert.
And I made one of my worst calls last year when I said Gabbert would be a key backup quarterback, and I thought he could do it in their offense. And, well, he's Blaine Gabbert, and I was wrong. So
guess who else was wrong about that? Me.
The Titans?
the Titans and me and you. We were all three wrong about that.
All of us drank the Kool-Aid and all of us got straight up Jim Jones'd. It was bad.
Yeah, we're all like, oh, Blaine Gabbert, he's athletic, he's got a big arm, former, first round pick. We drank the Kool-Aid. But we have another one of those guys now. Another like stellar athlete with a big arm who was a former first round pick in Ryan Tannehill, and we'll probably be wrong about him.
But Tannehill has had a track record of
he's been a starting quarterback in the league.
And not a. I mean, statistically, he's been bad, but from a team standpoint, he's been willing to play different styles in order to remain moderately competitive. He's a significant upgrade over Gabbert as a backup.
Dude, incidentally, vis-a-vis Tannehill, I think he and his wife are going to own Nashville, in that they're both really good looking and they're kind of like semi-Christian and they're super high profile. I think Nashville is the perfect town for people like that. She's going to have a reality show.
And his name's Ryan. His name's Ryan. A perfect Nashville, hot guy name.
It's a Nashville Hawkeye name. They're going to have a reality show in 6 months. Like, I guarantee it.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a Nashville-based, Tannehill-based reality show, kind of starring his wife, but he's just sort of along for the ride. In that, I think he's a hot guy with no charisma, which makes him fit right in Nashville. So he'll feel right at home there.
Yeah, can he sing country songs badly? Because those guys tend to do well, also.
Exactly. Pipe. My favorite Titans signing was a guard, Roger Saffold, former Indiana Hoosier. Played it on the Rams.
I'd like to take this moment to say that this is the most predictable moment of this podcast. Ted's favorite signing is a guard.
Yeah, the fact that I'm stoked about a guard. I'm excited to watch Roger Saffold play. I think he makes us better. I think defensive end Cameron Wake makes us better. So he's old. He's an old pass rusher that we got from Miami. And I'm excited about Cameron Wake. I think he's an upgrade over the
Derek Morgan, the guy that they got rid of, was one of those guys who was, if you were to like paint a picture of a pass rusher, it looks like him. And then he also rushes the passer a lot like a painted picture. So
6 sacks a year. You were getting 6 sacks in 16 games with Derek Morgan. That was just the deal.
And Cameron Wake is one of those guys who might put up 6 sacks in 2 weeks. He might only be on the field for like 20 snaps a game, but man, does he get to the quarterback.
He'll be situational, but I like it a lot. So Piper, we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to go back to something that you said to me off the air. And it concerns my baseball team, the Seattle Mariners, who I'm really excited to watch. This will be my first full season as a Mariners fan. So I've purchased, you're going to see it at Indy Live. I've purchased a Mariners hat. I'm probably going to wear it on stage at Indy Live. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited about my team. But you think that the Mariners are going to be a dumpster fire this season. And I want to talk about that because I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think this season could be real bad for the Mariners, but I want to get your take on my team.
Well, so the Mariners for the last 2-3 years have made more trades than anybody in baseball, trying to kind of get to the level of playoff competitive. And for about the first 2/3 of last year, it looked like they were on track to do it, and then they fell apart. And they've been about 500 for a few straight years, which is a bad place to be because
it is.
You either have to tear it down or you have to spend a ton and get to the top, and that's really hard to do. So
did you know who the Mariners are? They're the Timberwolves.
Yeah. I think they might be a little better than the Timberwolves because the Timberwolves, like 500 would be an achievement for them.
That's true. Dude, but I got you off track. Keep going.
There are some parallels. A handful of really talented players, a bunch of disappointing other players, and they never quite reach expectations. Yes, there's some parallels there. So they decided to go the teardown route. They traded every player who, every player of a certain veteran level with any success for a bunch of young guys.
Yeah.
Which has been successful for other teams, but is also really risky because prospects in baseball are notoriously unreliable. So they're going to be a dumpster fire on purpose this year. So it's the kind of thing where, like when you're remodeling a building, you throw a bunch of junk in a dumpster. That's kind of what they did. So the question is, how good are those young guys going to be? And then who do they add around them who's a veteran next year and the years following? Because they're not even trying to be good this year.
Yeah, that's right. So, Pipe, let me ask you this, just philosophically. As a fan, coach me. How do I enjoy cheering for my team during a rebuild year? Like, my team is kind of, tanking is an NBA term, but they're in a rebuild. They're in a rebuild year. How do I enjoy this team in the midst of that?
Well, I can speak very well to this as a Twins fan because we've had about 3/4 of a decade of this exact state of things. And it is entirely based upon following prospects. So that's guys who are on the team who are young, and you're looking at what's projectable. So you're not looking at this year's stats because young guys, they'll get called up in September and hit 9 home runs and hit 380, and you think they're going to and you realize, they're doing it against other teams' AAA players too. So it doesn't really count. So it's how projectable are they? How are they performing? How are they overcoming slumps? Just Do they get better over the course of the season? Those kinds of things. And then who's coming up behind him in the minors? So you love minor league baseball? Well, here's your chance to follow all of the Mariners minor league teams to figure out who's on the way up.
Yeah.
Because that's how they're going to. I mean, that's how they're going to restock the team. That's where the Twins have been, and been what's so disappointing about them is because their best young talent has been either injured or underperforming for 2 or 3 years. And this year's kind of a make or break year for a couple of those guys. So, but it is all about that, which is, it's way different than football. Because in football, young guys come in and they are stars right away. That never happens in baseball.
Yeah.
In basketball, you can tell who's going to be a star quickly, even if they don't lead the team to wins quickly. You know, usually as a rookie or second year player, you go, oh, that's a future all-star. And you can usually tell. And then the team might, usually it takes a few years for them to be a winner. Yeah. Baseball is a total crapshoot, like what Houston did a few years ago, where they just went. They were the one of the worst teams in the history of baseball, and now they have Carlos Correa and they have George Springer and they have Jose Altuve and they have all these guys who are hugely successful, and they're one of the best maybe 3 or 4 franchises in baseball. That's best case scenario.
Yep. No, that's right.
That's what you're rooting for.
Yeah, no, you're right. And there's some young guys on our big league roster that I'm excited to watch. I'm excited about Malik Smith. I'm excited about Yusei Kikuchi, our Japanese left-handed pitcher that we got in the offseason. And there will be fun individuals to watch. But yeah, I think the total body of work will be.
You guys got Justice Sheffield from the Yankees, right? Is he?
Yep, we got Justice Sheffield.
Is he going to be in the minors, or is he going to?
Yeah, he's going to start in the minors. Okay. So, Justice will be in the minors. There's another prospect. Oh, Shed Long. I'm excited about Shed Long. We got some fun guys. Some fun guys in the minor leagues. Who are you most excited to watch on the Twins, Pipe?
Well, it's a cliche answer, but the answer is Byron Buxton. So he was there. He was the number 1 overall pick. I don't remember, 4 years ago, something like that. Did really well in the minors. Has had moments in the pros, but every time you think he's going to get on track, he fouls a ball off his foot and breaks a bone, or gets a deep thigh bruise that knocks him out for a month, or a concussion or something. And it's always fluky things. It's not like he has a bad hamstring that continues to flare up. So just crossing fingers and hoping for health, because when he's healthy, he's the best center fielder in baseball in terms of defense. And when he's clicking at the plate, he's a really productive player. Maybe a 260, 270 hitter with good power and just insane speed. So if he clicks, I think that'll make a ton of difference for them. And then Miguel Sano is the other one, who's another highly touted prospect who is perpetually injured, and he's starting the year on the DL, so not a great start there.
Yeah.
And then the Twins are just interesting because they signed a bunch of just guys who have been moderately successful elsewhere, but don't have high upside. So like Marwin Gonzalez, Nelson Cruz, who has been really successful. I'm excited to watch him just because he's fun, man. He has one of my favorite swings in baseball. It's just like watching a guy swing a sledgehammer.
It's like watching a guy chop wood.
Yes. And man, can he hit the ball a long way. So assuming he doesn't realize that he's ancient all of a sudden, he'll be a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure,
and then, I think they're the kind of team who, if the Twins win 78 games, I'll be disappointed. If they win 85 games, I'll be pleased. But it's kind of that range. Anything better than, say, 84, 85 wins will be kind of mind-blowing. Anything worse than, say, 78, 77 wins will be fire everyone. But they don't have. I don't see a ton of opportunity for running away with a division or having a hugely surprising year.
Pipe, how many wins do you think the Mariners are looking at this year?
Oof. Well, let's see. They're in a pretty decent division.
Yeah.
Which makes it tough because of the weighted schedules.
Yeah.
Low 70s.
Dude, yeah, I'll have to look at the over/under on Bovada before we record again and see what Vegas says about it. But
I like 71 in my mind, something like that.
Interesting.
Which is not very good.
That's not good at all. No, that's not good at all. That's a long season. Piper, we've got 4 minutes left, and I want to talk about something really unusual that you brought to the table. And it concerns a basketball player who I think we probably both kind of loved in the early 2000s and that we enjoyed watching.
Yeah,
and
strong adoration for this gentleman.
Dude, yeah. So this guy is now a high school basketball coach. Am I getting this right? Rasheed Wallace.
Yes.
He of the early 2000s Pistons fame. He
of the record-breaking technical foul compilation.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. He of the like flying off the handle at the drop of a hat fame is now shaping young minds, Piper, and building up young men as a high school basketball coach. So tell me about this.
So I don't know a ton of details other than that he has been hired as the head basketball coach at what is, I think, a pretty successful high school basketball program. And the only thing I know about it is that, but that was enough to capture my imagination. And what would it be like to have that guy as your head basketball coach? Because, I mean, how's he ever going to tell a player, keep your cool? Big, coach?
Yeah.
You know who you are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the other thing about Wallace. Everybody who played with him loved him.
Yep.
He was one of the best teammates according to all the guys he played with. So he clearly knows something about like team culture. He just was also a loose cannon.
Exactly. Yeah, he was a fun guy, and maybe he was in the perfect culture on those Pistons teams because there were other leaders. Like there were clearly leaders on that team, like on a personality level who did all the heavy lifting, like leadership wise, and you know he could be passionate and be fiery, but still kind of fit in and you know be a good piece there.
I think the other thing is I think his reputation. He did get a ton of technical fouls, but I think his reputation got marred a lot by being on those Jailblazers teams.
Yeah, that's true.
Where he got a ton of technical fouls because he barked at the refs and it was a lot of sort of on-court antics.
Yeah,
but I don't remember him ever being violent. I don't remember him ever getting in trouble off the court, you know, whether it was drugs or violence or mistreating women or any of those things. My memory might be wrong, but I think it was all just being kind of volcanic on the court, whereas the other guys he was with, you know, Zach Randolph got arrested for like 44 pounds of weed in his car, and Bonzi Wells was genuinely insane and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's a different kind of thing because with maturity that can change and it's an expression of competitiveness, whether it's a good one or not. Yeah. That's different than being sort of a bad dude.
I agree. Pipe, I think I'm gonna maybe be the Rasheed Wallace figure on our basketball team that's gonna go up and challenge Spurgeon College. I could see myself, you know, on my better days kind of playing that Rasheed Wallace role. So tip of the cap to Rasheed. Congratulations on your coaching job, and we will follow that with interest. So, Pipe, I want to sign us off, but your Rasheed news item made me think of the last sports book that I just finished, which was this. It was the Jonathan Abrams Prep to Pros book, the NBA book.
So good.
Which was a really fun read, man, and really like I knew the whole high-end high school basketball world was filled with dirtbags and just liars and charlatans. Yes. But like that book gave me a whole new appreciation for the level of dirtbaggery that goes on in like elite high school basketball circles. So
he did such a fascinating job writing that one though, just in terms of the way that he followed the narratives of different players. So it's kind of built around KG, and Kobe was heavily in there, and LeBron to a degree. I loved it. I thought it was so good.
Yeah, same. Anything you're reading, Pipe?
Let's see. Dude, we haven't done one of these in so long, I can't remember. I think the last one I read, and I don't know if I talked about it on here, was My Losing Season by Pat Conroy. Did I talk about this one?
I think so.
Okay, crap.
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about it again because it's been 4.5 months since we did a sports podcast. Conroy is one of my favorite novelists, but most of his novels are kind of autobiographical, and this one's actually a memoir. So it's the story of his senior basketball season at the Citadel, so military school, and their relationship with their coach and the unique relationship with these players and how they just couldn't quite pull things together. So it's sort of coming of age, it's definitely about basketball, but it's like basketball in the early 60s, so it's a very different style. And he's just such a good writer and storyteller that he makes memoir work, but then he also brings it around and talks about conversations he's had with these guys when he was going back to tell this story, so kind of their present day relationships.
Yeah.
And it's, all of this happened during the era of the Vietnam War. He's at a military college. He was sort of a misfit and outcast there. Just, it's fascinating, as is all of his stuff. So, it's My Losing Season by Pat Conroy's the last sports book I finished.
Nice, baby. Well, speaking of finishing, we have finished a marathon episode, man. This was a blast. It was good to get caught up on all these things. Piper, I would say that we've wandered to and fro throughout these sports topics.
I believe we have.
And until next time, Larry Centers.
The Happy Rant is brought to you by Resonate Recordings. If you go to resonaterecordings.com, you can see the full range of services they offer. So if you're considering starting a podcast, they are the ones we recommend going with. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see their prices, to connect with them and ask any questions, and to see what they can do to help you launch, edit, master, and improve your podcast. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see what they can do to help you launch and improve your podcast.